You ever wonder who's sitting in the backseat of your car when you're driving alone at night? Most people don't until it's too late. My name's Jake, and I've been driving for Uber in the suburbs of Ohio for about 2 years now. It's decent money, especially on late-night shifts when the drunks and night owls tip big. But last month, something happened on one of those shifts that made me question everything. I haven't driven since, and I don't know if I ever will again. It was a Thursday night just past 1 a.m. The streets were dead, typical for a small town like mine. I'd just dropped off a loud group of college kids at a bar downtown when my phone pinged with a new ride request. The pickup was only a mile away, some residential street called Maple Lane. The name on the app was Sam. No last name, no profile picture, just Sam. I didn't think much of it. People use fake names all the time. The drop-off was a gas station about 10 miles out, near the edge of town. Weird spot for that hour, but I've seen worse. I pulled up to the address, a little one-story house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The lights were off and the yard was overgrown, like no one had lived there in a while. I honked once, waited, then texted through the app, "Here at 142 Maple Lane." No reply. I was about to cancel the ride when the front door creaked open. Just a sliver. A figure stepped out, tall, skinny, wearing a dark hoodie that hid their face in shadow. They shuffled toward my car, head down, hands stuffed in their pockets. Something about the way they moved felt off, too slow, too deliberate. But I brushed it aside. It was late, and I was tired. The back door opened, and they slid in without a word. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Couldn't see much, just the outline of the hood pulled low. "Hey, Sam, right? Heading to the gas station on Route 12? I asked, trying to break the ice. No response, just silence. I heard the faint rustle of their clothes as they shifted in the seat. "All right, cool," I muttered, pulling away from the curb. Some passengers don't talk. I'm used to it. The first few minutes were fine. The hum of the engine filled the quiet, and the streetlights flickered past like a slow heartbeat. But then I noticed something. Every time I hit a stop sign or slowed down, I'd hear this faint scratching sound from the back seat, like nails dragging across fabric. I peeked in the mirror again. Sam was just sitting there, head tilted down, hands still in their pockets. Maybe it was their shoe against the seat. I turned up the radio a little and trying to drown it out. Didn't help. The scratching kept going, steady and rhythmic, like a metronome. "So, you from around here?" I tried again, my voice cracking slightly. Still nothing. The silence was starting to get under my skin. I focused on the road, gripping the wheel a little tighter. We were about halfway there, cutting through a stretch of unlit back roads lined with trees. That's when the smell hit me, faint at first like damp earth or old leaves, but it grew stronger, sharper. It wasn't body odor or cigarette smoke. It was wrong, like something rotting. I cracked my window, hoping it'd clear out, but it didn't. If anything, it got worse. I stole another glance in the mirror, and this time, I saw Sam's hands move. They were out of their pockets now, resting on their knees. Pale, bony fingers, almost too long, with dirt caked under the nails. The scratching stopped, replaced by a low hum, like someone breathing through a clogged throat. My stomach twisted. "You okay back there?" I asked louder this time. No answer, just that hum, steady and deep. I flicked on the overhead light, pretending to check my GPS. That's when I saw it. Sam's head was still down, but the hood had slipped back just enough to show a sliver of their face. Skin grayish, sunken, like it was stretched too tight over the bones. One eye was visible, cloudy and unblinking, staring at nothing. My heart slammed against my chest. I snapped the light off and floored it, the tires squealing as I took a curve too fast. I didn't care about the speed limit. I just wanted this ride over Dot. The gas station was maybe 3 miles out now. The humming got louder, and I swear I felt the air in the car get colder, heavier. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the heater was on. I kept my eyes on the road, telling myself I was imagining things. Late nights, too much coffee, had to be that. But then I heard it, a voice, raspy and low, barely above a whisper. "Stop," I froze. "What?" I said, my voice shaking. No response. I looked in the mirror again, and Sam's head was up now, fully up. The hood was still low, but I could see their face, or what was left of it. Lips cracked and peeling, teeth jagged, eyes milky white. They weren't looking at me. They were looking past me through the windshield. "Stop," they said again, louder, like a growl. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt on the empty road. "Get out," I yelled, twisting around in my seat. But the back seat was empty. No Sam, no hoodie. Just my jacket crumpled on the floor where they'd been sitting. The smell was gone, the cold was gone, the humming, gone. My hands were trembling as I fumbled for my phone. The app still showed the ride as active, destination unchanged. I canceled it right there, my fingers barely working. I didn't move for a good 10 minutes, just staring at the empty back seat, trying to process what the hell just happened. Eventually, I drove to the gas station, needed light, people, something normal. It was one of those 24-hour joints, half dead with flickering fluorescence. The clerk, an older guy with a bored expression, barely looked up when I stumbled in. "You okay, man?" he asked, chewing on a toothpick. "Yeah, just a weird night," I managed, grabbing a coffee I didn't want. I didn't tell him about Sam, didn't know how to explain it without sounding insane. But as I was leaving, he said something that stopped me cold. "You're the third driver this month asking about Maple Lane. Nobody lives at 142 anymore. Not since the accident." "Accident?" I croaked, turning back Dot. He nodded, finally looking at me. "Yeah. Guy named Samuel crashed his car out on Route 12, maybe 10 years back. Died on impact. House has been empty ever since." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove home with every light on, checking my mirrors the whole way. When I got there, I deleted the Uber app, threw my keys in a drawer, and haven't touched them since. I keep telling myself it was a prank, a hallucination, anything but what it felt like. But last night I found something that won't let me sleep. A scratch mark on the backseat upholstery, long and jagged, right where Sam's hand had been. Dot. So yeah, next time you're driving late at night, maybe check who or what you're picking up, because some passengers don't leave when the ride's over. What if the perfect getaway you booked online wasn't as empty as it seemed? Or if the host you trusted wasn't the only one keeping tabs on you? My name's Sarah, and last fall, my boyfriend Mark and I thought we'd scored a steal, an Airbnb cabin buried deep in the Wisconsin woods, far from our chaotic Chicago lives. It was cheap, quiet, and promised a weekend of peace. But what we got instead was a nightmare that still haunts my every quiet moment. This is what happened, and if you're planning a cozy retreat, you might want to listen up before you hit book. It was late October, and we found the listing online. Cozy cabin retreat, $50/night. The picture showed a small log cabin surrounded by the towering pines, a fire pit out front, no neighbors for miles. The host, a guy named Daniel, had a 5-star rating and a generic profile pic, just a silhouette. His bio said he lived in Milwaukee, about an hour away, and managed the place remotely. We messaged him, locked in 2 nights, and hit the road Friday afternoon. The drive was fine until we turned off the highway onto a winding dirt path. No street lights, no signs, just trees closing in tighter the deeper we went. We pulled up around 7 p.m. The cabin looked like the photos. Wooden walls, a slanted roof, a single porch light flickering in the dusk. It was dead quiet except for the wind rustling the leaves. Mark grabbed the key from the lockbox and we stepped inside. The place was small but clean. A living room with a fireplace, a kitchenette, one bedroom, and a bathroom. A Ring doorbell camera was mounted by the front door. Daniel had mentioned it in the listing for security. We unpacked, lit a fire, and settled in with some wine. It felt good to unplug until the noises started. It was maybe 10 p.m. when I first heard it, a faint tapping, like branches brushing the windows. I ignored it. We were in the woods after all, but then it changed. A slow, deliberate thump, 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 like footsteps circling the cabin. Mark heard it too. Probably a deer or something, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. We peeked out the windows, nothing but darkness and swaying trees. The thumping stopped, and we laughed it off, blaming the wine. But when we went to bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A Ring app notification. Motion detected at front door. I opened it, and there was a grainy video. Someone standing on the porch, tall, wearing a dark jacket, face hidden in shadow. They didn't move, just stood there for 10 seconds before the clip cut off. My stomach dropped. "Mark, wake up!" I hissed, showing him the footage. He bolted upright. "Who the hell is that? The host said no one's around here." We checked Daniel's profile again. His last message said he was in Milwaukee all weekend. This guy looked like him though. The same height, same build from the silhouette. Mark grabbed a fireplace poker and cracked the door open. "Hey, who's out there?" he shouted. Silence. He stepped onto the porch, empty. No footprints, no tire tracks, just the wind. We locked everything and turned on every light, but I couldn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., another notification. Motion detected. This time the figure was closer, right up against the camera. The jacket hood was up, but I swear I saw a glimpse of a face. Pale, sunken, eyes too wide. Then it vanished mid-clip, like the footage glitched. By morning we were wrecked. The woods felt oppressive now, the silence heavier. Mark called Daniel, no answer, just voicemail. We decided to leave early, but when I went to pack, I noticed something on the kitchen counter. A key. Not the one from the lockbox. This was old, rusted, with a tag that read, D. Larson, 1982. We hadn't brought it, and it wasn't there last night. "What the hell?" Mark muttered. We checked the Ring footage again. The clips from last night were gone, replaced with a single new one from 6 a.m. It showed the same figure walking into the cabin, but we'd been awake then, and no one came in. Panic set in. We threw our stuff in the car and peeled out. Halfway down the dirt road, the radio crackled on. Static at first, then a low voice. "You shouldn't have left." Mark slammed the brakes, but the radio cut off. We didn't stop again until we hit the highway. Back in Chicago, I dug into the cabin's history. Turns out a Daniel Larson owned land there in the 80s. In 1982, he went missing after a fire gutted his cabin. Never found. The property sat abandoned until it was rebuilt and listed on Airbnb 5 years ago. Reviews were glowing, but a few mentioned weird noises or shadows, brushed off as wildlife. I thought it was over, but last week, my phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A Ring notification from the cabin's camera. We don't own it anymore, but the footage loaded, me and Mark, sleeping in that bedroom, recorded from above the bed. At the edge of the frame, a figure stood in the doorway, watching. The timestamp? Last October, the night we stayed. I deleted the app, but yesterday a package arrived. No return address. Inside was that rusted key and a note. See you next fall. So if you're booking a cheap Airbnb in the woods, check the host a little closer. Some guests never really check out. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to find yourself completely alone in the middle of a Black Friday crowd? Or what if that cheap deal you're chasing comes with a price you can't afford, like your sanity or worse? My name's Emma, and I live in New Jersey. Every year I gear up for Black Friday. Great deals, new gadgets, and the thrill of the chaos. But last year, on November 29th, something happened that made me swear off malls for good. This is my story, and if you're a deal hunter like me, you might want to think twice after hearing it. The alarm blared at 6 a.m., and I was out the door ready to hit Westfield Mall. It's the same every year. Thousands of people lined up, shivering in the cold, waiting for the doors to open. I was flying solo this time. My friends bailed because of the weather. The parking lot was a madhouse. People shoving, kids crying, everyone buzzing about the sales. I had my list ready: a new TV, some headphones, maybe a few cheap clothes. When the doors finally opened, the crowd surged in, and I elbowed my way toward the electronics section. But after a while, the chaos wore me down. That's when I spotted it. A small store tucked in the corner of the mall, completely empty. The sign was faded, but it read, "Everything 90% off." I did a double take. 90% off? Maybe it was a pop-up shop trying to draw attention. An old man stood outside, tall, thin, white hair, with a strange, crooked smile. He locked eyes with me and said, "Come on in, sweetheart. Everything you want's inside." His voice was gravelly, like something was stuck in his throat. I hesitated, but the promise of 90% off pulled me in. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the silence. The noise from the mall, the chatter, the footsteps, the chaos just vanished. The shop was small, but the shelves stretched high, almost to the ceiling. The lights were dim, flickering slightly, and the air felt cold, like the AC was cranked too high. I looked around, no other customers, just me and the shopkeeper, now standing behind a counter. "What are you looking for?" he asked, his smile widening. "Just browsing?" "Got any TVs?" I replied. He nodded and pointed to the corner. "Over there. You'll find it all." I walked over. The shelves were packed, TVs, phones, clothes, but everything looked off. The screens were coated in dust. The clothes had faded stains. I tried lifting a TV. It was heavy, like it was filled with concrete. Then I heard it, a faint rustling, like someone moving nearby. I spun around. Nothing. The shopkeeper was still at the counter, staring at me. His eyes seemed to glint now, catching the light in a way that made my skin crawl. I told myself I was just tired and kept browsing. I picked up a pair of headphones. The packaging was torn, but the tag said $5. $5? I figured I'd grab it and go. As I headed to the counter, something dripped onto the floor. I looked down, a thick black liquid, like oil, seeping from under the shelves. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Old store. Ignore it." But his tone had an edge now. I shoved the headphones in my bag and said, "Just these." He tilted his head. "Sure, but take a look around first. No rush to leave." That's when I got uneasy. I glanced at the door. It was closed. I didn't remember shutting it. "No, I've got to go," I said, stepping toward it. The handle wouldn't budge. I pushed, pulled, nothing. I turned back, and the shopkeeper was closer now, standing in front of the counter. "Too crowded out there. Stay a bit," he said. The smile was gone. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Battery at 80%, but the screen flickered with static. The air in the shop felt heavier. The rustling grew louder, like something was shifting behind the shelves. "Open the door! I need to leave!" I shouted. He laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You chose to come in. Now you stay." The lights started flickering, and with every blink, the shop changed. The shelves weren't wood anymore. They looked like wet, crumbling clay. The items were vanishing, and that black liquid was spreading across the floor. I screamed, but my voice just echoed back at me, "Trapped." I threw myself at the door again, and this time it gave way. I stumbled out, but the mall was gone. I was on a cracked, empty road, fog curling around me. I looked back. The shop was just a burned-out shell, not a building at all. I ran until I saw the mall's lights in the distance. When I got inside, people were still shopping, like nothing had happened. I checked the time. 6:30 a.m. I'd been gone 15 minutes. My hands were stained with that black liquid, and when I checked my bag, the headphones were gone. In their place was an old photo, the shopkeeper, dressed in 50-year-old clothes, with that same crooked smile. I looked it up later. In 1970, a store in that mall burned down. The owner, an old man, died in the fire. People say he comes back every Black Friday, luring shoppers with cheap deals. I burned the photo, but I still hear that rustling in my dreams. And yesterday, a package showed up on my porch. Those headphones with a note, "Come back, sweetheart. So next time you spot a Black Friday deal too good to be true, think twice. Some discounts cost more than you realize."